Could a UFO be the October surprise? I've been thinking a lot about, the term October surprise. It's when a huge news event or data dump or something's discovered or it makes itself known or a pandemic, something huge to alter the results of an election or take out a political opponent. What's going to be the October surprise? Because so far, things are going on all over the world, but nothing really that's going to stop our election. And hopefully nothing happens. Hopefully it's smooth sailing from here on out. But traditionally in the past, there has been leaks of news to kind of throw off the opponent and whatnot right before the election. But I came across some articles about what if it's a UFO? Now, I'm going to stay in my lane for a second because I've been worried about what if they say there's another pandemic and they make us all locked down and we can't get to the polling places. So I kind of looked into it, and luckily there's really nothing except the traditional flu, COVID still going around, the same illness is still going around. There is an outbreak as of September 2024 of Marburg in Rwanda, Africa. No cases of it here. The concern of that is we have a lot of people just kind of coming to America in all these open areas and not going through it the correct way. And so they're not getting the physical, the questionnaires, they're not being vetted. So could they be coming in with the Marburg virus? That's one of the concern about not having rule of order. There is a system in place that's just being trampled on. And this is not political. This is just basic health concern. But there's no other virus or something going on to be concerned of right now as far as something that would lock us down. But then, the latest things that the CDC has come out with was, McDonald's had the E. coli outbreak in their hamburgers. And then a month ago, they had the listeria outbreaks in deli meats. And so we were avoiding that, but nothing to affect the election, right? But then I was thinking, because they were leaking little things about seeing UAPs and UFOs, and who's behind that? Are these government psyops? Are these actual real interdimensional beings making themselves known? And so, that is something to ponder. Could they come out and say, oh my gosh, this huge craft is over Washington, D.C., and we got to figure this out. It'd have to be something big like that, because I just feel this election is so momentous. It's one of those, you've got to go out and vote. No matter what your affiliation, you've got to go out and vote. So, because if you're not happy with the outcome, at least you tried. You tried to make your vote heard. But, and I ran across this too. Presidents in the past that have seen UFOs. Did you know Jimmy Carter did witness a UFO? I got to read you this. So Jimmy Carter, former president, spotted a UFO while he was waiting for a Lions Club event to start on January 6th back in 1969. So he followed his father into the service group, and he was involved in that network there. Let's see, is there anything about it? And then it said on that night at about 7:15 p.m., just after dark, and what weather records described as a clear, cold night, he was standing outside of a restaurant in Georgia, a town less than 1,000 residents. And there was about a dozen other men waiting outside as well. And they all saw a bright light approaching them, and it got their attention. And one of Carter's colleagues pointed to the horizon and said, hey, look over there, look over to the west. And all the men looked over and saw a bright light appear coming toward them and then moving rapidly away. And they said it was about 30 degrees above the horizon, looked as large as the moon. And then as it was moving away, it got smaller and even changed colors from white to a reddish color. And then it got larger again. This is what President Carter actually said. And at various times, the luminous object appeared more blue and then other times red. He estimated the object was 300 to 1,000 yards away, and it was set up against a dark, clear, star-filled sky. This group of men and President Carter watched it for about 10 to 12 minutes before it slowly moved away and disappeared for good. President Carter said he had a tape recorder that night, and he explained later that he captured some of his colleagues' memories of the event that night so he could, remember the incident. And then 4 years later, it says he ran, the Georgia governor then ran for the presidency, and he had documented his UFO sighting. And then a director named the International UFO Bureau and heard that President Carter had seen something suspicious. And so he sent President Carter the questionnaire and wanted to get his statement on what he saw. And so he did. He filled out the questionnaire. He talked about his previous military service in the U.S. Navy and his training in nuclear physics. So he kind of knew, how things should work as far as physics and flight and whatnot. And that he still swears that it was technically a UFO, and he believed it was likely it could be an alien spacecraft. So he also said it was probably some type of electronic occurrence. And he says it was obviously there and obviously unidentified. I just think that's the most interesting UFO statement and to appear before someone who was going to be president, I kind of think that's important. I don't remember hearing more about it after that. And it even said in the 1970s, many wrote off President Carter's sighting as someone just being confused over the appearance of a bright planet like Venus. That doesn't sound like a planet, especially one that's moving and changing colors and changing sizes, especially when a dozen men witness this. But they say standard phenomenon accounts for a large percentage of UFO sightings. And even trained Naval Academy men like Carter, who would have known celestial navigation through and through, could be confused by a planet. I doubt that, right? I doubt that. But they always want to debunk it from some ridiculous rationale, right? So anyway, it wasn't until 2016 that a researcher finally solved President Carter's sighting and proved him correct. In fact, he was only off by a few minutes, and the sighting would have appeared at almost the precise location in the sky he recorded. And that year, former Air Force scientist read Carter's description and knew almost instantly what the future president had seen. And he says it was a high-altitude rocket-released barium cloud. So, I don't know. There's that. Do with that what you will, right? And then they just go into explain what a barium cloud could do and, how it could have looked like that. Again, it doesn't really line up with President Carter's what he said it was. Interesting too, President Bill Clinton had a huge interest in UFOs, and of course Reagan did as well. And it even says Ronald Reagan had an experience also with a UFO. And President Ford led a congressional investigation into strange sightings in his home state of Michigan in the 60s. And they said that President Reagan encountered a UFO while flying in a Cessna plane near Bakersfield, California in 1974. So he saw it up in the sky when he was up in one of those small Cessna planes. Reagan's pilot that night later recounted noticing a strange object flying several hundred yards behind Reagan's plane. And it was a fairly steady, bright light began to accelerate behind the plane, and then it began to elongate. And then it just took off at a speed that we're not used to on this planet. So it also went up at a 45-degree angle. Also, no craft at that time could do that. I don't know if any craft can now, but no craft at that time could. And they said that other witnesses on the plane, everyone was shocked and surprised. And witnesses said the UFO did indeed go from a cruise speed with the plane and then took off at a fantastic speed. And then another witness said President Reagan was wowed President Reagan said the craft went straight up into the heavens. Isn't that interesting? I mean, what is the deal with all these presidents witnessing UFOs? And that just brings me back to, is the October surprise going to be some type of craft or UFO? And, and they make it seem like a threat, where I personally don't think that's what's going on. But because everything else, yes, there's a lot going on in the world. But, what could really challenge the election or an opponent? I think it would be something big like that, right? Let me hear your thoughts below. I know on this channel, I've talked about witnessing something when I was a child. You can look at my other videos, and then we'll do a live stream later this evening so I can get your thoughts and comments on this topic. I think it's really interesting. Or if you guys have an idea about an October surprise. So we'll do that at 8 p.m. Mountain Time. So that should be around 10 o'clock towards the east. Okay, so I'll see you guys later tonight on the live, and thank you for being here.